Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, hello, Gig Nation, and welcome to the Golf Industry Guru podcast. And we are so excited because in today's session, we are going to talk about leadership. And we are going to talk about leadership with an individual that I think exemplifies the qualities, the history, the success, and the role of a leader at the numerous fantastic jobs and clubs that he's worked at, certainly here in Canada. We have today the general manager of the Pulpit Club, also known as the Devil's Paintbrush, and many other fantastic facilities there in Ontario. Former from Magna, from Hamilton Golf and Country Club, from the National, and now for the last 5 months, as I mentioned, at the newly named Pulpit Club. 2020 Executive Professional of the Year from the PGA of Ontario, Mr. Rob Roxborough. Rob, thank you so much for joining us in the Gig Nation on today's podcast.
Well, James, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate that, and I've been looking forward to coming on since you offered me the chance to speak with you and everybody who's listening.
Rob, you and I are both PGA of Canada members. And I remember meeting you when I had the great fortune many, many years ago to come and play Magna. I don't remember exactly why I was in Ontario, but I remember going to Magna for the very first time and experiencing a level of service, a level of quality, a level of conditioning, a level of culture with the employees that I don't recall. I hadn't experienced before in the country. It was unbelievable. It was like back in the early 2000s. And that was the first time I believe that I met you was at Magna Country Club.
That's right. And, thank you for all that, because what you just described was everything we were trying to be. And, we were trying to set ourselves apart. And the one thing you touched on there was culture. The one thing that was unique about that opportunity more than anything else was it was a startup. We had no employees. We had no members. We didn't even have a name for that golf course when we started. So to see it grow and to make it what you wanted to, it's really interesting because, when you adopt a golf course like I have, and thank you for the great intro, very complimentary of where I've worked, but when I've walked into every other scenario, I've adopted staff and adopted a team and adopted a cultural practice that sometimes needed adjusting or sometimes was completely sort of, the vision of where we wanted to go anyways, and I just got on the train. But when you start a startup, it's probably the most refreshing opportunity you have, and actually at the same time, it's actually the most pressured opportunity you have, because every mistake that you have, the train starts going in the wrong direction pretty quick. We were pretty fortunate to not have too many of those sort of misdirections, but thank you for that intro to Magna, because yes, it's where we met, and I remember it fondly, but what you described was everything we were trying to be.
Well, and obviously, Rob, you were there, I think, for like 13 years. And today's topic that I wanted to really embrace with you and pull out of you is leadership. We're whether back then you were a young golf professional. We're still young golf professionals in our minds. You and I have the best haircuts in the business. But obviously, you were starting there and spent many years there, as you said, kind of, adapting, creating a culture. Magna continued on to have so many events and such a reputation, awards and accolades, et cetera, et cetera. Pardon me. And then, you've even in the other roles, you've just continued to obviously work at some really the highest level of facilities in the country with the Hamilton Golf and Country Club and the spectacularly beautiful and challenging National Club. And then now the Pulpit, which I want to ask you about. But what if I may ask, going back to Magna's time, you were a young, first of all, how did you get chosen? So what, that became that big responsibility? What do you think it was that attracted the owners to bring you on board and to give you that responsibility, to create that culture and to do all those things? What do you think you showed them in your conversations that they thought that you would be the leader that they needed?
It's really interesting because I was approached by the original general manager who was there for just a couple of seasons, David Kaufman. And I'd met Dave in the past, and we got to have conversations. And when I took my first role as a director or head professional, it was at Deer Creek Golf Course in Ajax, Ontario. And that was, a build out of Deer Creek and Fawnbrook, and we rebranded it. We showcased everything that we could. We brought the Jim McLean Golf Academy, which was out of Miami at Doral, and we send our PGA professionals down to him. So we brought basically an American golf school concept to Canada. So the snowballing of all this sort of reinvention of what that golf property was got Dave's attention. And he called me up one day, and I happened to be in the pro shop at Deer Creek, and he said, I got great news, and I have a question for you. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, I'm going to be the first general manager at Magna Golf Club. I said, it sounds amazing. Nobody had ever played the course. This is winter. This is Christmas of 2000. And I said, I've never been there. Nobody's played it. And but good on you. I said, congratulations and welcome to the golf business. And he said, do you want to be my director of golf? And I said, you know what? No. I said, actually, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm really loving what we're doing here at Deer Creek and at Glen Cedars and with the Golf Academy. The National Post had rated us the #1 golf school in the country. I said, no, I'm really sinking my teeth in here. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 24 hours and I'm going to call you back tomorrow, same time. So I looked up, Googled Magna, and I found out that Lauren Rubenstein had read an article about it. And I also found out Doug Carrick was the architect. Now, Rube, I knew. Doug Carrick I'd never met. So I called Rube up. What about this? He goes, you'd be a fool not to go there. Called Doug Carrick. He goes, it's probably one of my finest designs, cutting edge, a company that's unique and you want to work for it. So later that afternoon, I literally hopped the fence at Magna International and I walked as much of the golf course under snow as I possibly could. And I saw this gigantic infrastructure of a building. I go, that's the biggest clubhouse I've ever seen. It turned out to be Magna International headquarters. Yeah. So anyways, I go, it's the biggest clubhouse I've ever seen. Of course I'm taking this job. So I met Belinda Stronach at the Magna headquarters with David, and my interview was short and quick, and it was pretty much, a little bit of some of the changes, some of the highlights of my career. And why do I want to work for an auto parts company that's never owned a golf course before and for people who've never been in the golf business? And I said, basically the part of it was, what a great opportunity for me to kind of help you lead the path. And I'm working with people who are smarter than me and a lot of other things. And together, I think we can make a formidable team. And the opportunity to be fantastic. And so that's really what it came down to being. And, it was a bit of a risk, when you, for all the boxes I checked before, a company that wasn't in the golf business, they're in the auto parts business, working for people who'd never owned a golf course. We didn't know what the membership structure was. We didn't have a name. And so anyway, it was but I looked at all of those obstacles as opportunities, or those unknowns maybe as opportunities. And I thought, you know what, where am I going to cut my teeth? To be quite honest, I wouldn't have had the successes following Magna if it wasn't for Magna. And I learned a lot, and it got to the opportunity to be so creative. And from the logo to what it was called, it wasn't originally called Magna Golf Club, but over time, as having it be directly on the property, started to sort of just take that iteration of a name. We looked at calling it a lot of things, and with the Stronachs being in the horse business and that being, and the horse racing, Mr. Stronach was horse breeder of the year twice in the world. And so anyways, hence the logo. And we looked at calling the club the Stallion and a lot of other things. But anyways, circling back to it, the opportunity to be there and kind of shepherd this incredible project with the resources that it had. But the cool part about it was the vision that they had. So I'm in this conversation with Belinda, back to the interview. I'm in the conversation with Belinda, and in walks Frank Stronach, and I stand up and introduce myself and shake his hand. And I guess at that point in time, Belinda had kind of given him the nod that, this guy's kind of working out. He's checking the boxes. So anyways, Frank sits down for literally 30 seconds. My introduction to Frank Stronach was, people who come here will have played the finest golf courses in the world, and from where they come, they will have played the best courses, eaten the best food, and stayed in the best accommodations. Here we will have all three. Your responsibility to me is to take the things that you've seen, in golf and your travels, what is the best of those? Make them ours, make them better, and make it Magna. That was it. And I honestly, the hair on my arm still stands up when I say that. And it really was the opportunity to have a blank slate and to create all that. And we kind of, spoke about the culture at the beginning of it. But when you work with that sort of that much of an open gate to create what you want, it was special. I'll never have that opportunity again. Close here at the Pulpit Club, but that was a startup, and so that was probably what of all the golf courses I've worked at, and for its 13 years, probably still is closest to my heart because I was given the greatest opportunity.
Yeah, what an amazing opportunity, as you said, and when we do these podcasts and when we're talking to people that have had experiences such as yours, I always like to try to pull out some things that maybe people of all ages in the golf business can learn from. And the couple things that I just heard there was, number one, is that your willingness to take a chance. Like you were in a great job that you had. You love what you were doing. You're doing great at where you were, but that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for you to pursue and to see. You don't jump in blindly, but I think part of being a leader, because I want to keep bringing that up today, Rob, but part of being a leader is the willingness to take a chance and to realize that even as great as things you might feel they are today, there can be new exciting things tomorrow and elsewhere, right? It's like, so that thing. The other thing that I really pulled out of that was your attraction to the vision that they had, Stronach had, right, for Magna. And it's like when you see people that have that passion. I mean, I was the good fortune, as you know, to work for Mr. McLaughlin and Jim McLaughlin, the same thing at Western Plateau. When I remember him doodling on a piece of paper when we were coming up with the above and beyond philosophy and the culture of the facility and the vision that he had, right? You get inspired by that when you're around people that have that kind of inspiration. And so you obviously felt that with Magna, and obviously why you were there for 13 years. When you talk to even today, Rob, and the opportunity with the Pulpit Club and another magical place, what is it that inspired you to take on this role and this opportunity? Is it how does that compare to the other stops along your journey?
This is probably, and the reason why I actually took this position was most like my Magna opportunity, most like my Magna mission, my Magna vision, and this was Devil's Pulpit, Devil's Paintbrush, Devil's Pulpit Golf Association, owned by, originally and created by the starter, the people who created Trivial Pursuit. So it was, it was their vision to have an incredible golf property, and they didn't invent one, they invented two. And as time went by, one of the two partners had passed away, almost a dozen years ago now. And, for one of the owners, golf wasn't his primary love as it was for the gentleman who deceased. So it just became a golf course, and it was great. And it was a wonderful spot. And the more people, more time went by, less people it became, I played there 20 years ago. I played there 15 years ago. And we just celebrated our 30th anniversary at the Pulpit last year. And next year will be the 30th anniversary in 2022 for the paintbrush. So it's been around longer than we realized, but at the same time, it kind of became a little bit part of the background. And rather than being, when it was started, it was the cutting edge, the coolest, the state of the art, everything that we tried to make Magna and of course, Westwood. So it's one of those things that when you try to be that, and then over time, you got to change the furniture in your house because it was cool when you bought it, doesn't mean it's cool 20 years later. So when the new ownership group, Long Ridge Partners, came in as really two primary partners, I had the opportunity through Global Golf Advisors to be sought after as a candidate for the position. So my interviews were two. One was I met with some of the principals in Long Ridge, and then I met with the two owners at their own homes. And the fact that they kind of welcomed me in, I was like, now that's something I would do. That's cool. You're already part of the family. And my interviews were amazing. And my interview with one of the owners, by the time it was finished, I was interviewing him. because the questions he was asking me and how successful he was. And I did my homework on who these two people were when I got there. And it was, you know what, that's a great question. I've never been asked that question. I said, can I ask you the same? And it became this really great, just like you and I just sitting around shooting the bull, it became less of an interview and more of a get to know you. And I left that day hoping I would have the opportunity. Like, these guys get it, wanted to be different, wanted to be state of the art. Come in. We want you to run it. Tell us how to run a golf club. Tell us what we need. And so anyways, that was the great part about it. Since I got here, I started in May of 2020. So I'm just a little over almost a year and a half now into it. And it was, you know, a 30, 60, and 90-day plan. One of the things I did, and the leadership component, I think back to that again, because we should keep tying that in. I think one of the things they saw in me was I wasn't going to sit around, get my chair at the right height for the first 3 months. I hit the ground running. And in the first 30 days, this is what I'm going to do if I'm your candidate. And the next 30 days, 60 days out, this is what I'm going to do. And by the time 90 days is done, starting in May, I will have seen the club fully operational at its peak. And now, hence we had COVID, but let's get past it. I didn't factor that into who I was going to be for them. I created a game plan for them. I walked in with a 30, 60, and 90-day plan. So they weren't wondering what I was doing. I came in with a leadership component that this is the ownership I was going to take of it, and this is the direction I was going to go, and I will report accordingly. And so after the first 30 days, I came up with a prioritized list of what I referred to as hotspots. These are the things that probably need to be addressed first. And the order of that and what the resources would take to make change there. And then the 60 days would be, after those 30 days, let's see the cause and effect. And after the 90 days, let's see if we can shift back to our word we started with, culture of what we're doing, and gain some momentum. One of the things one of the owners I meet with probably every week or so is the word momentum keeps coming up. And after that 90-day period, we created the positive momentum and it started to trend in the right direction. That's how the cultural shift happened. Everybody wanted to be on board. We explained what the new mission and vision and values were for what our organization was going to be moving forward. We removed the name Devils because it wasn't necessarily congruent with where we saw ourselves being in a family-oriented, coming together communal club. It looked as though having a kid have a Devil's Pulpit T-shirt on and then going, though it's a flower, and they're both flowers, Devil's Pulpit and Devil's Paintbrush are both flowers. Still, the omness of the right word of that is of them wearing a Devil's T-shirt to school is like sort of what we wanted to be. So we shifted the name. We shifted not so far off it because internally we still call it the pulpit and the paintbrush or the brush. So we just removed Devils and just kept it the Pulpit Club, took the place of Devil's Pulpit Golf Association as the umbrella, and then the leadership of Pulpit at one spot, then Paintbrush at the other. So, but back to the charm of the want for the position was they wanted me to drive the bus, and that they would check in from time to time, recheck my priority list that I made in the 30, 60, and 90-day plan. And then that's really how we've operated for the 18 months and haven't really deviated too much. All we've done is continue to add on to it.
Well, there's a few things that I pulled out of that. I mean, what I love when we talk about qualities of leadership, you know, the one thing I heard you say when you're talking about in the interview was the leaders listen. Right. And so you were talking about listening to the questions and then inquisitively asking that question back, because I find I've been reading up about, the difference between managers and leaders and all that stuff, and one of the things that I really love is that kind of conversation around the fact that leaders inspire. And if you want to inspire people, you have to listen to what their wants are and their needs are in order for you to pull the triggers and to do the things that's going to inspire them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for you, Rob, do you have some qualities, whether it's people that you're hiring, whether it's people that you want to work for, whether it's yourself? I mean, when we talk about leadership, there's no shortage of definitions. But for you, as a PGA member that has ended up through the work that you've done and delivered to be a leader now, you now lead clubs and cultures and you lead employees, but you also lead the members and then you lead the owners. I mean, you were leading all kinds of different groups. For you, do you have kind of some some things you think about, if I said, what's your leadership style, or what are you as a leader? Or if someone in an interview said, tell me, Rob, about your leadership style, what would be the ways that you would kind of define that for you?
First of all, the two hardest questions in the world are tell us about yourself and what is your leadership style. So they're right there. So if you're ever in a job interview, you better have those drafted before you walk through the door.
Yeah. And your 30, 60, 90-day plan, by the way, as well.
Yeah. Put that right ahead of it.
Yeah. Whether you're taking over the back shop or you're taking over, the club.
One of the things you actually said, James, that was really interesting is management versus leadership. And I think that there's an inherent difference between the two. Managers manage the day. Leaders manage the vision and the direction. People listen to management. People follow leaders. And I think that if there's something you can provide as a leader, and I don't necessarily say I have a two-sentence style, I think the one thing is that you have to have a vision. The vision has to be shared. People have to take ownership of it. They have to feel a personal want or desire to share that common goal that you're having. Most importantly, people have to know what the role is. Not everybody can bring their goalie equipment to the hockey game, right? Everybody has to know what it is. Sometimes that is a organizational culture shift or dynamic, and sometimes it's an aces in places philosophy. And the organizational cultural shift is really figuring out the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses. What do I like about working here? What do I not like about working here? Asking some people some hard questions that you may not want to hear the answer to even over time. But more than that, it's, and that allows you to get everybody to have that the communal goal and shift towards it. Our communal goal here is to make it a family-oriented, fun, great place to be. Reasons to come that are outside of necessarily always being golf is part of our internal dynamic. And we hire people to fill those voids. And we hire people, you paint the sketch, you sketch it, but it's the color that you fill it in with the people that provides the picture. And you have to hire correctly in both of those areas. The other thing I alluded to there, and I'll get back to the cultural portion of it organizationally, but the aces in places philosophy is really an event mentality. It is you put your best people on the front line. You're putting your power play out with your best forwards and your best people to score on the power play. You're not putting your best defensive defensemen out on the power play. Manage accordingly when it's crunch time. Aces in places is not an everyday philosophy. It's when you have your member guest or you are hosting, maybe it's the men's Canadian amateur or the ladies mid-am, or it's something that's your signature event, club championship, and you want to make an impression. The service model of all that is putting the right person in the right place with the right playbook and understanding that their left wing, your right defense, your center, you're the goalie. And then internally, we call that passing the puck. So when someone comes through the front gate and the first person they meet and having that element, part of you alluded to, the what we want it to be, what we want the service dynamic to be. I have two parts. One is make a difference. Every day when you come, part of your responsibility being an employee and being a manager and being a leader is to make a difference. Whether it's in that person's life, listening, giving them better direction, being a friend, whatever it could be, make a difference. Move your feet faster. I always say to new staff, all I'm asking for you is to have fast feet and quick with a smile, and people will know you're trying. It's all I ask of you. We'll show you the rest. We'll coach you up. The other element to that is from the. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But the
definition of leadership we were talking about.
So the vision element is make a difference. The other part of it was knowing answers to questions before they're asked. So when the guest drives in and they don't need to know, is Mr. Roxborough here yet? Actually, don't ask the question. It should be, nice to meet you. Mr. Roxborough's up on the driving range. He's waiting for you, or he's having lunch, or he just ran up to the halfway house. He's coming down with you. He'll know you're here. Let people know you know the answer to the question before they roll down the window. That's part of it. Part of leadership is also preparedness. Also, part of leadership is preparation. Part of leadership is also anticipation. what is that person going to ask me? What is that, whether it be the interview for the job or the person who's in front of you? Walking in with a playbook makes you more confident. You're projecting that outwardly. The server at the restaurant, when they come to your table and they don't know the specials, doesn't offer you the specials because they don't want to speak to something that they don't know. They're not prepared. Be prepared in every single way. And whether it's for the interview, do your homework, really show up, with a knowledge that you can exchange. And like you did today with your intro for me, I appreciate all that because you know what, you took a couple of minutes, and though we have history together of meeting, there's been a couple of iterations of my career that you touched on, and I appreciate you putting the homework in. But those things make a difference to people. They make them feel important, and that cannot be lost. On whether that's the staff you're coaching up, the people who you want to follow your mission and vision and values and direction, leadership, and also to the management of the day that's managing the tasks and what they're doing on the day of to execute the game plan. All that has to come back to it, but it starts from the top down. And as long as everybody knows what you're expecting of them, that's a critical element. When I hire someone, I think we owe them a few sets of responsibilities. The first thing we owe them is we owe them the opportunity of understanding the organization and what we're trying to be. That's what brings people in. Organizations hire people. I want to work at Nike. I want to work at IBM. I want to work for Elon Musk. Organizations and visions hire people. After that, it's our responsibility. After that, we have to provide them an education on what their job is and the roles and responsibilities. We have to let them know what their expectations are of those roles and responsibilities so that they can fulfill those expectations. And then on top of that, then it becomes a sense of empowerment. They have to feel confident enough in that job that they feel empowered and that they can take their responsibility. Back to sort of where I was with the leadership dynamic, ownership of that space, of that responsibility. Now I'm doing it because I feel empowered because I've been educated. I understand the expectations of my role and responsibility. What's my position? I'm owning it, and now I'm empowered to take those steps forward. That's how you get a lot out of people. And I think that those are really important parts for us as leaders, but at the same time, for making sure that we get the best out of the team that we've assembled, that we're putting on the ice every day, that we're making sure that we get out of them what we want. Because if they fall short somewhere, we have to look internally and realize what part of the onboarding did we not check the box of.
Wow. I've got like 40 words written down, and I have no idea what they all relate to because there was so many ideas just came up there. That was so interesting, Rob. But I want to stick on a couple things because a couple things resonated that I want to pick up. Because we talk about leadership, and here's a conversation I often have with people. Leadership relates to whether or not you're leading the Pulpit Club or you're leading your retail department on shoes. Like, you got to take ownership. Because if you want to take ownership one day of leading the Pulpit Club, it starts with owning the back shop of XYZ Golf Club in Timbuktu, Missouri. And so my question for you is, did you learn to be a leader as you got exposed to other leaders or people in the industry? Or do you born or nurture, the whole kind of concept.
Exactly.
So do you feel like you when you come across leaders, and let's make it third party, when you see other people that you think are leaders or you hire people leaders, have they learned that, or it's just natural to them? It's just the way that they are. They understand the whole concept of taking ownership, of being responsible, or do you think you can learn to be a leader?
I think you have to want to be, first of all. I think that not everybody wants. Some people are just happy being the assistant coach, and that's the spot that they know is a comfort zone for them. I think you have to be willing to want that responsibility first and foremost, because with that, you're the person asking for the ball with 3 seconds left and no timeouts, and that's the role you walk into every single day. So that's not for everybody, but I think partially, I've watched good leaders and I learned from them, and. I think that I also first of all, I wanted to be that person. Second of all is I watched and learned from those that I respected. And I think that I got to learn a behavior and a pattern from others. And then I reset the course on my own. So for instance of that is when I walked into, whether it be, the Magna's not the example because that was a startup, but when I walked into Hamilton, when I walked into the National, and when I came to the Pulpit Club, I was the outsider walking in. Walking in and steamrolling the entire thing is not my approach. I really find the first thing I try to be is approachable. Let people know I humanize myself. And that's a big part of it because a lot of people, want to be on top of the mountain, but don't want to raise all the ships, at the same time. They want to sit up there, and that's fine. I'm not that person, and I don't want to be that person. And I want people early on to know that that's not who I am. And that's been proven positive, and it's also proven negative. So the positives are I'm approachable. People feel like they can talk to me. And then I think that also has lent itself into a good human dynamic that I have with the staff that makes it be somebody that they can come to and somebody that they can see as a change agent that they can confide in. Some things that's also not been positive in some, I would say in hindsight, looking back at my career, I would say that I've been too slow to react to some things that maybe I would have picked the fruit off the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, the easy things to fix. I might have been more reactionary to it and been quicker with it if I maybe didn't walk in at the pace I've walked in every single time. I think the Pulpit Club, I've learned from my previous, hence I created the 30, 60, and 90-day plan. I made things actionable for myself on a timeline that I knew I had confidence in because of experience, but at the same time I knew I could deliver on. And so those are the things that I created. One spurned the other. But I think that the leadership dynamic, people have to see you as approachable. They have to see you as somebody who can solve their problem, whether it's we don't have enough bottles of water or we've run out of teas. Then here's $50 and Golf Town's down the road. Let's get through today and let's make it work. Get as many as you can, and we'll spread them out, give them to the starter so that we don't put them all in the carts and everybody hoards. Here's 2 teas for you, sir. Here's 2 teas, ma'am. And we'll ration, but we'll solve the problem. And they have to see you as that person that they can come to with the problem, and we'll be quick with the solution and not critique them for having the problem. After, now, why did we run out of teas, guys? How did we get there? And, well, we had more guests than we thought, and we put them out, and people were storing them in their bag, and we didn't realize, and we thought we had an extra box. Whatever the problem is, that can be solved, but let's not do it twice, and let's not rip people for it. Let's just make sure that we have a solution, and then let's order teas tomorrow. That's the fastest we can get here. So that's part of it. But the walking you have, people have to feel comfortable coming to you. But if you're on top of the mountain, it's a long climb to get there. One of the things at the National, when I was at Magna, my office was in the pro shop. When I was at Hamilton, my office was at the front door. Here at the Pulpit Club, my office is in the building adjacent, same floor as the pro shop, and I can look out over the driving range. I see who's going on. At the National, it's interesting. The office was upstairs. You had to walk a gauntlet of 3 flights to get up this thing and pass go twice and use a get out of jail card. And honestly, it was one of those things to get there, and it made coming to the club and people experiencing being around you challenging because you weren't as easily accessible. Your location at your work has a lot to do with how people will interact with you. Be mindful of where you position yourself. You may need to displace somebody who's in an office in order to find that you're more accessible to the golfers, the members, and your team. So, be available during that. And that's part of the leadership and the onboarding portion of it too. So I know we went in 300 directions right there, but I know you still have 39 more words you had written down a second ago.
Well, here's the thing. I want to just to the very end there about the tea story. I love the tea story because I wrote this on a couple of pages earlier. Being a leader doesn't mean you don't also have to be a manager, right? Like, so you still have to cross T's and dot I's and get the job done. With the management portion of the job is about getting things done. You still have to run the business, do the budgets, get stuff done, assign tasks, make sure those tasks get done. The leadership part, I think, to me, is what creates the culture and the experience, right? And in our industry, in particular, it's about relationships, about people. So my question for you is, like, one of the things that I've learned over my time is that there is no individual definition of a leader and a personality. Like, because I have had quiet people that I have found, I'm inspired by, that, would say 3 words a week. And sometimes they would inspire me by saying, nothing,
Right.
Be like, oh, geez, I was 1 minute late. He won't talk to me for 4 hours. But, there's different ways to inspire people and to get people to lead people. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting. And when you were talking about your qualities and about, the low-hanging fruit, or about being quicker, I would also suggest to you, though, that, leadership is required to dig a ditch or to go to war, and to do different tasks. But when you're trying to create an experiential culture, leadership is very much, there's got to be empathy. There's got to be a great deal of relationship building and hand-holding. One of the things that I say as a consultant is that, look, you don't hire me to have things stay the same. You hire me to make change.
Right.
And change is not always pleasant. If you got the wrong person in goal, you got to replace the goalie. And it's just going to make the team better. And it's not going to be fun, but the goalie's got to get replaced. I mean, this is what happens all the time. But the challenge when you're a consultant, by the way, is that you're often not there long enough to pick up the pieces after you get rid of the goalie, or to make everybody else feel comfortable that they're not next, or that the ship's still going in the right direction. So I think when you were talking about that, Rob, I think what's relevant for the best leaders that I've come across, or that have inspired me the most, are the ones that listen and that communicate and that share the vision and keep you updated on where things are going, and explain to you why we're closing at 2 p.m. on Mondays to fix the driving range or whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
Well, there's all that kind of stuff. I think it's very, very interesting. You've obviously, probably for you, had mentors and different leaders that you've probably pulled. Like me, I've pulled things from to try to make them my own, and it's a hodgepodge of whatever, and at the same point in time, I know there's people that have enjoyed working for me. I also know people that hate me and hate working for me. They don't like my style, don't like the way I do things, they don't like the decisions I make. But as a leader, you have to take that, like you said, if you want the ball with 3 seconds left, someone's going to also want the ball and not be happy that you got it.
One of the things you touched on there is really interesting. Back to management versus leadership for a second. There's a word that is taken so much out of context, and management is responsible for this. And that word is accountability. And that is a really important part of being a leader too. Because if we had a wedding at the club and I walk around patting everybody on the back for what a great job you did, what everybody said they had a great time at the wedding, and really 2 people ran the ball on that wedding, and they got exactly the same pat on the back or attaboy, so to speak, then it looks disingenuous for the rest. You have to know where the energy came from, the accountability of that. And at the same time is that wedding was not to their liking. We dropped the ball on this and this. You can't talk to everybody. Somebody has to say, okay, next time when we do this or we face that challenge, we've got to pivot and move over here, or let's do that instead of this because that wasn't to their liking. So maybe the next person also might not find it to their liking. So those are the things. Accountability is a big part of it. And when we manage the day, that's the accountability element. The leader also needs to tie back into that. So you need to really be in tune with who you're communicating with on a daily basis. I mean, being the general manager here at the clubs, 2021, we had 211 employees. Okay. I really speak on a daily basis to about 10. And every day I check in with those 10. And then the other ones, I wander around with a coffee and I wander down to the bag drop and I'll go up to the kitchen. And of course I'll steal a quality control, the special for the day, and go out on the golf course with the superintendent and, chip balls early in the morning and thank the bunker crew for doing what they're doing. But you've got to make sure that your energy is going out of the positive and of the, we could do this better, are correctly directed, because if they're not, as a leader, then you look disconnected to the message you're trying to portray. You look like you're actually not following your own set of goals or your own alignments.
I talk a lot about having a critical eye, and that great managers, great leaders, great business people, great operators, that they constantly, the challenge is walking through your club and saying, great, 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 terrible. And realizing that there's always ways to improve, and how you create a culture of your team that they constantly want to improve. They constantly want things to get better. It's like, yes, we can pat ourselves on the back, but that's no fun. Patting ourselves on the back all day is no fun. What's fun is finding creative ways to make that even better. How do we exceed expectations? And what's required to do that is the ability to walk through the facility and go, how can we be better? And to make people want to have that conversation. Not like, oh my God, here he comes again. Rob comes again and tells us what we're doing wrong. It's like, no, hey guys, like, fantastic work. Do you think we could do it better? What else could we do? How do we make this year's member guest more memorable than last year? How do we make Christmas Santa's brunch more memorable than last year? And then it becomes a culture, I think, of innovation. And I think that's what to me, the leaders are those individuals that effectively, I used to say, like, some of the people that I've worked for, that they are always walking around. I was always worried a little bit, like I was always like I was always worried, like they were looking around. I knew they were looking around. I knew they were seeing stuff that wasn't perfect. And so I spent my day trying to figure out what they saw and then trying to make it better.
Interesting. Very interesting to look at it through their lens. That's a very interesting way.
Well, because they were leaders, I wanted to make them happy. I wanted to say, it's like your parents. It's like your relationship. If you feel empowered and you care about that person inspires you. You want to make them happy. You want them to pat you on the back. And so you got to find ways as a team member to figure out how to exceed their expectations, And I think that's when I know I'm working for someone that is an inspirational or a leader, is when I want to please them as an employee, as a department head, when I'm in charge of the back shop and I want the back shop to be spick and clean.
Another element to that is you want to please them. You also don't want to disappoint them.
Yes.
That's almost in the same sentence. That's the comma to the second part of the sentence.
Yes.
And, it's funny how you do it. I mean, one of the things I'm very mindful of is my managers manage their teams. I might look around and see what it is that's not exactly in alignment. So I'll give you an example. So the other day, as we shift seasons, as we're taping this and we're transitioning to fall, not everybody has the exact same sort of uniform as we move to fall. Some people have a thicker sweater, some a thinner sweater. We're kind of, just because it's hot then cold and this and that, point is not everybody's exactly in line today with the staff uniform requirements that we have applied, because they're taking articles from home that are fitting their personal need, but it's not, now we've lost quote unquote uniform. Some people are wearing the home jersey. Some people are wearing the away jersey. The logo's still the same. So anyway, I said that to one of my managers the other day. I said, what do we do? How do we get, number one, how do we get there? Well, we don't have enough of it. Okay. So again, I solved the problem. We're going to this store. We're going to buy X number of sweaters that are all exactly the same. We'll inventory them. And I said, and then people can come and get one. So number one, we solved the problem. But number two is you're going to go with the solution. You're going to come and tell them, okay, this is now the sweater that you want. This is where we're at. The point of it all, though, is that it's, it goes to them. If I said, by the way, you're out of uniform, you know what they think? I'm getting fired, right? Now it's that manager that they speak to on a daily basis. I see that, you know what? You don't have something that makes you comfortable. I'm going to make you comfortable. Now, back to what we just said, you want to work for them. You don't want to disappoint them by wearing the wrong thing. So it all comes back full circle to it. And at the same time, if you have one of the managers and perhaps as somebody that they can see that that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation for them, certainly the uniform conversation is not. But if you do have a conversation, do you want me to be there with you? Can I walk in halfway through the conversation and ask you guys what you're talking about, even though I know what you're talking about? Can I be, hey, what are you guys up to? Oh, we're just talking about this. It's funny. And be the second, can I compound that and say, it's funny, I noticed that the other day. It's great. I'm glad you guys are having that chatter about it. Have we come up with a solution yet? Or can I maybe say, can I kind of chime in and give you my thoughts? And then all of a sudden, it's a solution. And there's a reason. And it's not just this person's picking on me. More people are seeing it. It's like the old quote unquote, everybody's talking about it. So it's providing that solution. So choreographing sometimes the outcome that you want to get people on board and is already predetermined but the person who's being, engaged doesn't even know that it's already predetermined. And so anyways, but that again gets onboarding and gets people again to follow. I kind of got in trouble today for not having my uniform right, but at the same time, they solved my problem. And this is even more comfortable than it was before. So, it's a big part of it. It's so simple as we're talking about it. I'm almost wondering whether people care what we're talking about right now. But it's the art of it. It's an art form. It's thought out. It's back to, one of the things about you're choreographing the experience, whether it's for the member, the guest, the golfer, or your staff. You're choreographing the experience. And that's one of the biggest parts of it. And that takes away some unknown when you already know what the chess pieces are on the board and how they move. Takes away some unknown. And people feel way less offended, looks a lot less haphazard in the decision making. And I think it really gets more buy-in, and people kind of, again, want to continue to pull the cart. So it's a big part of it.
Well, I love what you talk about when you say it's choreographed and also the collaboration piece, because it's so interesting. It leads into one of my questions for you about the difference of leading your there's a multi-part question. So number one is, I'm going to throw a few things at you. 211 employees. You're talking about you managing 10. There's one of my questions is, what are the opportunities that you use to provide leadership in an organized way, for all your team? And for someone, there's going to be people listening to this podcast going to have 11 employees, and someone's going to have 211, and someone's going to have 311. But for example, I use the year-end the orientation, the starting orientation opportunity, which we're now talking about doing online and everything else, and the staff event day and the year-end kind of opportunity, and then a couple others sprinkled in. It's like, here's what we're all about. Here's how we're doing. Maybe a few emails every couple months, about thanks so much. Here's some feedback from our guests. Here's how we're doing rounds, whatever it might be, right? So that's one of my things. But also, where's those opportunities? Because leadership, if I went to the board of directors and said, all the decisions we make are a collaboration between me and 211 people, and we kind of figure out what's the right thing to do, and they're going to look at you and go, "That's not what we pay you for, man. We pay you to make decisions." And so I always like to say, there's a time when we collaborate, and there's a time that you do what I say. Like at some point, the coach has got to make the decision and say, I heard everybody, but this is what we're going to do. And so from a, let's get back to the first question, which is about leading the team. Are there any structured ways that you try to make sure that you get to everyone on your team so that they see the vision? How do you paint that vision for them?
Orientation is the most important day of the year.
Yeah.
It is singly the most important day of the year. So a structure for an orientation would be, typically it's 1 or 2 days, depends on how many returning staff I have actually. And so let's say I have a lot of returning staff. Let's say I have a lot of returning staff. It is a 1-day orientation where the morning would be basically a state of the union of me getting up, expressing to everybody, introducing the management team, introducing what we're trying to be. You're here, expectations, accountabilities, roles and responsibilities, more importantly, how they all mesh, right? And when you're a 5:30 in the morning until 12:30 at night business, in Canada call it for the roughly greater part of the population, 225 straight days, holidays, this is and that. You've got to understand when the bunker team is done and there's still people serving food or parking cars or washing clubs and carts, everybody still has back to what's your role and responsibility, right? The aces and places. So I think it gets back to everybody understanding that though you're done your job, so many other things are hinged upon it, and the timing of the execution of it. Orientation is the most important day of the year. It is really, truly the day that people, you mentioned something right there, doing it online. I will do it outside before I will do it online. because people need to sense the energy. You need to be in the room. You need to look you in the eye and know that I'm counting on you. It can't just be everybody, all of you together. It's the vagary of that doesn't deliver the impact you need. Has to be this person's going to do this. This is the captain of the ship. Orientation, far and away, number one. Second of all, it's also important to know what you're walking into in an environment. I'll give you an example. At the National, number one golf course in the country. Get there, see the culture, and now I'm going to speak to bringing people together. See the culture, see that everybody works in their silo. They don't really communicate with other people in their silo. Golf pros and back shop work in their silo. Greens works in their silo. Food and beverage works in their silo. Halfway house works in their silo, kind of with food and beverage, but it's not attracted not attached to the building. So it's still an island that just happens to serve food.
Yeah.
So I see and administration, nobody goes up there because, again, you have to walk the gauntlet of the 2 staircases to get there. So nobody goes up there. So they live, again, on an island with a view. So I get there and I see this, my first year. Christmas party. What do we do for Christmas? We getting together. What do we do? Oh, we go to a banquet hall and we all sit down. And we sit there and we sit at our table, our silo.
Of course.
And we eat our rubber chicken and we get up and we pat each other on the back for a job well done. And then we go home. I said, you know what we're going to do this year? We're going bowling. We're going bowling, and on every bowling team, there's going to be somebody from greens. There's going to be somebody from golf. There's going to be somebody from hospitality. It's going to be somebody, and I meshed the teams together. So everybody had the opportunity to get to know somebody else and walk a mile in their shoes and find out, what do you do? Well, I get to work at 5 in the morning. I'm just getting in. I close as a dishwasher at 3. And, you work till 3 o'clock in the morning? And people now get to see what others do. And until you have that opportunity, now people got to know each other. The biggest problem came out of that? People now started stopping to talk to each other, and when 2 people are talking, nothing's getting done. So break it up already. But the point, though, is it was one of the best things I ever did. We did it for a couple of years. We humanized everybody. Back to that part of begin. Had everybody become relatable. There were no speeches. I got up in the middle of it and said, thanks to everybody during when we were all filling our face with pizza and beer, and that was it. And nobody was employee of the year, and nobody was special. Everybody was appreciated.
Brilliant.
And that was one of the most important things I did. And if I could tell you the next year, because that was at Christmas, and now we fast forward to April, and I saw everybody in the same room, and they all knew each other. And I looked at that, and I go, I won. That was a win. That was a check box right there for me. That was one of the best things I've ever done in my entire career. And you're going to think that's ridiculous with some of the cool things that I've been able to be a part of. That right there might have been one of the most important and best decisions I've ever made.
Well, no doubt. And you talk about choreographing, it's managing people. There's a reason why it's called managing people. It's not called managing tea times or managing a business, managing widgets. It's managing people, and people are unique and emotional and communicate in different ways. And some are shy and some are bold and some want to talk a lot and some don't, and some want to be on stage and some don't want recognition. I mean, I always say, what a good leader does, and I failed in every job I've had, because I can tell you I have never done a good enough job of engaging and getting into really understanding what drives every single employee, what motivates every single one of them, how I can help them achieve whatever they want to achieve. I mean, I'm pretty good with the leaders and the management team and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, you have that opportunity to engage with so many people. I got a couple more questions for you, Rob, because we're running out of time. So I want to ask you about, is there a difference in how you manage your bosses, your board? Is there a difference? I mean, I have some policies with the separate, like same thing. I have to manage downwards and I manage upwards, and they require sometimes some different tacks and some different strategies. So for you, Is there any skills that are more highlighted for you from a leadership standpoint in the way that you would manage upwards?
I think, yes. The first thing I always did before board meetings or committee meetings is really get in line with the chair of the board or the chair of the committee. So I always said to the chair, you and I need to present a unified front. In every single thing we do, we need to present a unified front. And if we can walk in there with those decisions already being done and already being had, and I got your back and you have mine, we've already got 2 votes in the room. So let's onboard everybody else into why we think it's a good idea. So that's a big part. And then also, kind of championing some of the things and testing the waters ahead of the board meetings, so that it was the desired outcomes were there with each individual board member who's going to have a vote. And I would go to the chair and go, the tournament chair is not going to be on board with that. The ladies captain is not going to be on board with that, but everybody else is. So we can sacrifice those 2 votes. No walking in. Let's get onboarding from the other 8 or the other number that was left over in the board. So really getting ahead of the problem streamlined the meetings, and being effective committee meetings and letting everybody know what the outcomes of the committee meetings were before the board meeting and introducing that so everybody could go. Didn't really like the decision that was made in the House committee chair to change the menu to have something, peas in every dish. Yeah. So, but you get ahead of that. And basically, that's not going to even be more than a conversation. We're going to re-look at that at the next menu committee meeting, and that will be next week because we don't want that to carry on. Streamlining the meetings by having the answers and knowing everybody's points of view before you go in. If you're the driver of the meeting in line with the chair of the board or the committee, that will really be most effective. It's the best thing I can say. Get ahead of the hard stuff. Have the answers, be unified, know who you're going up against, know what the score is before a vote takes place, and try to onboard as many people as you can. And second of all is speak with conviction and belief, because if you believe it, you're paid to be their counsel. So counsel them, and if they go off, go, you know what, we'll execute that plan. And then if you think it's wrong, say, can we just put a 1-month timeline on that and reassess that in 30 days at the next meeting of committee or board, and I'll let you know what it is, and I'll provide as much analytics to that decision as possible, because it might be the best that we did. I'm not necessarily going to, in line with it, but at the same time, we're going to try to make it work, and if it does or doesn't, here's why. And then that way you're not told you're sowing them, but at the same time, you're also proving with earnest that you're going to try and make this happen, but you have concerns about it. And get ahead of it that way. So those would probably be the things I'd be. If it's a decision you're not in line with, timeline the outcome for it to be reassessed.
That's excellent. That's really good. I mean, what resonates to me there, what I loved about it was, before you give your opinion, know other people's opinions.
Exactly.
It's like,
you know what I'd like to know? I'd like to, before I play that card, I'd like to know what you're holding. And that's basically it. That's how you're playing poker. It's exactly what you're doing.
But the thing is, people think that because I'm the boss, I have to go around and tell everybody what's going to happen. And there's many ways to do that. But the if you want to get people to come along with you, you have to understand where they're sitting, where their position is. Where do you sit on this topic? And let me understand you. Because maybe if I understand you better, it's going to change my opinion a little bit, or it's going to change what I think. It's that whole thing about gathering feedback and getting information. Okay, so
you know what it is right there? It's actually back to listening.
Exactly.
One of the very first points you made was leaders listen, and there you go. You were listening.
Yeah, leaders listen. 100% leaders listen. And so we're going to have some future leaders listening to this podcast right now.
Absolutely.
We've got some young PGA professionals probably that hopefully are listening to this and soaking some stuff in. And so, and I always like to say make the statement, that leadership is leading your back shop and being responsible for the shoe department as much as it's being responsible for the National Golf Club of Canada. So if you could impart some final suggestions of wisdom to a young girl or guy that does want the ball with 3 seconds left? They do want the opportunity to be responsible and to progress and to one day be the general manager of the Pulpit Club or any of the other clubs, XYZ in Timbuktu, whatever it might be for them, whatever their club that they aspire to be at. What would be one or two nuggets that you would share if you could? I hate that saying, if I could go back and do something over again.
No, for sure.
Because there's no regrets, but we all learn.
I'm going to break my answer down into two sides.
Wonderful.
Number one is, I think I'd just like to speak to the fundamental core responsibilities of the golf profession. And in the PGA, if you're going to be a golf professional, has 5 core fundamentals. Number one is they have the ability to play at a respectable level, the ability to teach golfers of all levels. They have the ability to administrate and execute events. They have the ability to merchandise and manage a pro shop. And one of the core fundamental abilities that's becoming more important as time goes by is the ability to communicate, not just in the verbal, but in the written word, e-blast, text message, Twitter, all these things that are now part of our written word is now more of our communication dynamic than ever before. Mm-hmm. So those things I think are fundamental. You have to have those, be very good at those, and you will be very good, well-rounded as a PGA professional. But to answer the leadership side, I've got a couple of quick nuggets. As you said, number one is take risks. Take risks. I took risks in my career. When I left college, I went to Jacksonville State University as a good collegiate player and then turned professional, didn't have $6 to my name. And I took a job in Jamaica. I taught golf at a resort in Jamaica and didn't know anybody, never been to Jamaica my whole life, but I needed the money, believed in that was my fastest, quickest way to work on my game 12 months a year and be able to be better at it. But the point is, I jumped into an unknown pool that could have been boiling hot or cold, and I threw myself into it. Take risks. Number two is you have to find ways of separating yourself from the other person who's walking a mile in the same shoes you are. You've got to be different than the associate professional at XYZ club or the head professional at that club. What can you do to make yourself different? You've got to find points of delineation. Back to taking risk, and I spoke to it a bit when I was at Deer Creek when we started this conversation. I brought the Jim McLean Golf Academy, an American golf school operation, to Canada by taking my PGA of Canada professionals and shipping them to Miami for 6 months to learn from Jim and his team directly. Because you know what I saw? At that time, people didn't believe in the PGA of Canada professional. They thought everything in America was better. And they would go to the States to golf schools down there and had zero opportunity for follow-up. So what did I do? I brought the States to Canada, got my professionals coached up. People bought in. Point, though, is my owners wanted to take a risk in that at the same time. How can you make us different from everybody else? Every other golf academy. At that time, there was only a few, but they were out there. Make a Score Golf was out there. Things are happening at Angus Glen and other clubs. A point, though, is they all had academies. Point, though, is we took a risk. Take risks. Separate yourself. Points of delineation make you memorable. Thirdly is experiences help you believe in yourself. You have to believe in you. Ultimately, that's where it is. You have to believe, as we keep going back to the same examples. You have to believe you want the ball. Whether or not you believe you can make the shot, you have to believe you want the ball first. After you have the ball, now you turn and look at the hoop and believe you can make it. That's all there is to it. You've got to believe in you. All these positives of feeling well-rounded, all these positives of the 5 core fundamentals, all these positives of experience, all these positives of having wins as you go along, all help fill your bucket for how you believe and what you believe in you and who you see when you look in the mirror, and more importantly, who people across the table see when they look at you, what you project inward at. And I think that if I could just give anybody a piece of advice, build a resume, have those experiences, and believe in yourself. That's all I can tell you.
That's so good, man. That's so good. That's so good. I'm going to add one to that because I've been listening to the stories today, and one that I always am a big fan of, because you talk about Dave Kaufman, talk about the Stronach family, talk about Jim McLean. My edition, my fourth edition, is work with winners. You know, if you want to be on a winning team, you got to surround yourself with the kind of people you aspire to be. And you got to find mentors, you got to find clubs, you got to find bosses, you got to find people that inspire you. Otherwise, you'll never learn how to inspire others. So I'm going to throw that in there. Rob, there was so many great nuggets there today about leadership, and you know, it's been fascinating to watch your journey and to see the types of clubs that you get to and that you are providing your leadership with. And I know the journey's not over. I think that's the other thing that's totally cool about our business and the work that we do. It's that there's always new cultures to create. There's always new challenges to come. Not that I suggest you should leave anytime soon. The Pulpit Club looks amazing. The excitement about where you're taking that place, and some of the things that people haven't been online and checked it out. If they want to reach out to you, Rob, what is a way that they can do that to get some more information from you? What's the best way? Through the Pulpit Club website, or how else?
My email and phone number on the Pulpit Club website. And so that's probably the easiest way to get to, you know, winter or summer. And R. Roxborough at thepulpitclub.com, ROXBOROUGH, and my first initial R at the front of that. And that's probably the easiest way, and I'm happy to be a sounding board for anybody. I don't pretend to know it all, but I might ask you the right question that will get you pointed in the right direction. So I'm appreciative of the time, appreciative of the opportunity to communicate a little bit of my story, and I'm proud of what I've done. I'm not done yet, and there's some really cool stuff going on that maybe we'll talk about down the road with junior initiatives. And I'm working with Steph Curry on getting kids in the inner city and that are underrepresented in golf, to get clubs in their hands. And what we're doing with the Mike Weir Foundation for mental health in youth and in Sarnia and expanding that net is something that I look forward to carrying on that dialogue down the road.
Another quality of leadership, Rob, is giving back, and good for you. Congratulations. Be proud of all those efforts. And I entice everyone that's listening, whether it's through the Gig Nation or through the PGA of Canada, to engage more and to see how you can support these worthwhile efforts and to grow the game of golf in this country and in other countries around the world. So, Rob, thank you so much again, and all the best. And I hope you enjoy a little bit of a break at some point over the next couple months to recharge your batteries. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I hope everyone has a great winter coming.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.